business. Act business.
You're welcome to your program Business Matter, a platform where we explore everything business regarding policies, insights, as well as partnership. On this week's edition of the program, we are going to be going down the lane of regulatory technology landscape to see exactly what is going about in terms of some of the latest trends, innovations, and insights that we can share that can help your business thrive. My name is Stephen Ipalebo Lawson. You're welcome.
Let's talk business.
Technology has come to stay. As a matter of fact, artificial intelligence is beginning to redefine every single way and every single manner in which we do business. How ready are we and how conversant are we with some of the questions that has to do with a lot of the technology as well as the opportunity that brings? A part of some of the things we explore on this week's edition. Let's have a business update. As is our culture on Business Matters, we invite a distinguished guest into the studio to help us do justice to the topic of the day. And the topic of today's edition is actually regulatory technology landscape, or you might call it Reg Tech landscape, bridging the data trust gap. And in the studio with me is my distinguished guest, who is a highly motivated, operationally astute and trusted ecosystem partner with over 20 years of diverse experiences, mainly but not limited to the financial services sector. He is applying his technology background and ability to help businesses think, act, and collaborate differently and creatively in response to the widening gaps in risk and regulatory compliance. He is leading Reg Tech Africa as an impact organization with a strong belief that the right use of technology for compliance and digitization can be a game changer in creating a safer and more sustainable world. He was voted the leading Reg Tech ecosystem builder in Africa at the 2022 World Business Outlook Awards. And he is also the promoter of the Reg Tech conference that holds every single year here in Nigeria. I'm talking about no other person than Mr. CYRIL Okoroigwe. You're welcome, CYRIL.
Thank you very much, Steve.
It's good to have you on set.
Yeah, pleasure is mine.
You know, it's an amazing experience when we talk about Reg Tech or regulatory technology from a live event as against we're discussing all of those things when we are in the studio. What has been the difference for you?
I mean, the key difference here is the studio environment basically provides the opportunity to reach more audience, right? And Reg Tech has become increasingly a core subject that people need to know about.
That's true.
Right? So I'm really happy to be a part of this, and I'm happy to share more insights.
Great. I mean, you're an expert, especially when it comes to what will we consider the right use of technology for compliance and digitization, which, as a matter of fact, we are making all kinds of cases to promote a safer world, a more ethical world. In your own experience, how well has the Reg Tech landscape been for Nigeria, if you compare that globally?
So I think the point here is, you use the word safer. I would use the word responsible, right? Applying technology in a more responsible manner to drive the needed outcomes, right? When you compare Nigeria to globally, I wouldn't say Nigeria has done too badly, but obviously there's still a whole lot
Absolutely.
that can still be done,
Absolutely.
right? if you look at some of the initiatives that the government has taken in terms of, promoting needed outcomes in the area of, for instance, in the area of driving financial inclusion, for instance,
True.
in the area of
True.
infecting cyber security.
True.
Even recently, the Nigerian Data Protection Commission that was actually instituted, right? So these are some steps that government has taken, and all of these steps really, are aimed to helping the government, to be more proactive and more effective in its regulatory posture.
We're looking at the regulatory landscape as it is, the regulatory technology landscape as it is, and we are trying to explore the bridging of the data trust gap. And we know data, as a matter of fact, is the new form of capital for most of the economics of the world today. As a matter of fact, you can't operate beyond having enough of data at your hands. Data will define so much in terms of that engagement. However, when one looks at this aspect in terms of bridging the data trust gap, how does that benefit the consumer? Because the consumer is the person who is obviously on the last mile and is also within the process in terms of the value chain. And so if we don't have the issue of data, if we have issues of data trust, as the case might be, how do you expect the consumers themselves to respond to that?
Okay, maybe I would want to take a step backwards, right?
Okay.
So usually regulation and business, there's always that thin line, right? And there's that delicate balance that always has to, play out, right? Because for the regulators, their focus is essentially to put in place policies, regulations that would help to safeguard investments, businesses, safeguard customers, like you mentioned, and all of those things. Provide enabling environment,
True.
and all of that. While for businesses, as part of their own broader objective, is one, to make profit, two, to provide service in a very efficient way, in a very fast way, and all of that. So usually there's that delicate balance. And applying the right regulation requires, tact, requires very good skill, such that the regulation also encourages innovation, while at the same time not impeding, pace, right? So, back to your question, customers or consumers are always, of course, at the center of all of this, because the regulators are there to regulate, to protect the consumers, right? So, the issue of data trust is key, and that is because data has become a very critical asset, right? It's become so important that it takes a central focus in terms of, this strategic decision-making process for nation building, for citizens engagement, and for so many other things, right? So the reason why the trust gap exists in the first place is because of the lack of data in itself. And in some cases, even when the data is there, right, it is not put into proper use. I give you an example. Today, I'm sure if I ask you, you probably have your data, with your mobile service company.
Absolutely.
You have your data with
the
your bank.
passports or the
You have-
banks.
So you have your data all over the place. If there is a way, right, of harnessing all of this data, putting them into proper use, that is where the real benefit comes in. And that is where the trust gap issue lies in.
But when we imagine that today we are living in the world of the 5G that is emerging, I mean, you're looking at emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, and how that is beginning to even redefine our engagements at different levels. I mean, for example, you hear of GPT, you hear of AI, and tech, chatbot, and the rest of them. All of these have come to play. But within the space of regulatory technology, as the case is, where do we see that, what role does that play when it comes to even the management of the data, as you earlier explained?
So technology will always remain what it is.
Okay.
And that is technology, right? But it is just a means to an end, right?
It's not the end in
It's
itself.
not the end in itself.
You know, because some people say, I have this technology. So you imagine maybe technology is some kind of arbitrary or out of the sky kind of machine that, you know, solves the whole problem, as the case might be. It's actually a means to an end.
Yes, that's what
it's
it
a
is.
process.
That's what it is, right? So, and that's where regulation comes in again, right? Because the application of technology to achieve the desired outcome is critical. It's very important. How do you apply technology in a very responsible manner? That's the key, right? You mentioned ChatGPT.
It's not the technology in itself. It is actually the outcome or the
outcome,
the end game, as the case might
yes,
be.
because technology most times is a double-edged sword. The ChatGPT you mentioned, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad, right? The same thing, even your phone, right? I mean, all technology gadgets, it has both sides, right? So it is the application, how you apply, and that's where the regulation comes in, to ensure that the application would help to achieve those desired outcomes that would benefit citizens.
How has that helped in fighting financial crimes? Especially when you look at the fintech space, you look at the banking financial services space, we've had issues with regards to KYC as the case is. Yet, fraud management has not been one that has given the consumers some kind of level of, you know, maybe appeasement or comfort, you know. And so does that also have to do with so much in terms of what we are not seeing happen in the regulatory space? Or is it more of a responsibility of the players themselves?
So I think there are different sides to that, right? One is as digitization, you know, increases, right? There's an increasing level of adoption of digitization. So also the inherent level of frauds, right, or risks would also increase.
Who bears the consequences? Is it the service provider or the consumer itself?
Obviously, at the end of the day, the consumer bears the brunt.
That's sad.
At the end of the day, consumer bears the brunt. But it's in the course of natural law. The issues would have to happen, but having a process to mitigate is what becomes, you know, that should be the focus, right? The consumers on their own part also need to be empowered, right, through education, more of consumer literacy. The more aware the customers are or the consumers are, the more they are also able to take immediate steps to check some of this. You notice that as part of the problems today, especially in the digital financial services ecosystem, the level of fraud keeps increasing.
Fantastic topic, which is regulatory technology landscape, bridging the data trust gap. Please stay tuned.
Let's talk business matter.
If you've just joined us, this is Business Matters, and I'm in the studio with Mr. CYRIL Okoroigwe. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Reg Tech Africa, an impact organization. We're looking at the topic, regulatory technology landscape and bridging the data trust gap. And before then, CYRIL, we had talked about some of the responsibilities consumers have to take upon themselves, but still we don't even have so much in terms of widespread awareness, literacy. So there is a huge gap, as a matter of fact, that is existing that needs to be bridged when it comes to that. But one of the questions I'm very much interested to ask is this one that has to do with remittances. You know, money coming from abroad are quite very important. Where does all of this fall in, especially when it has to do with data and data management or data or regulatory aspect of it, to ensure that our remittances does not fall prey to some of these issues of compliances and the challenges that you can find in the industry?
Pretty much for cross-border payment, right, there are rules that govern the process. And these rules involves systems, it involves processes, it also involves technology, right? And essentially, at the end of the day, ultimately, the financial institutions play a very critical role in ensuring the movement of funds especially across borders, right? So the key thing is, the rules. How does these rules really help to ensure that the risk elements are properly controlled, right? I think that's the key element. Typically, for cross-border payment, because of the very nature of it, right? Regulations across different jurisdictions is different, right? And even processes across different jurisdictions may also be different, right? And the need for standardization becomes very important.
Recently, the central bank is actually trying to see how they can sanitize the agent banking ecosystem, as sub-ecosystem, as the case might be, with requiring and demanding that anybody who is operating a POS terminal, whatever the case might be, must be registered with the CAC. And now that is another source of data that can also help address something. I don't know what your response or reaction will be to that.
So if the focus is on the risk from a risk perspective, absolutely that makes sense.
Great.
Right?
Great.
But however, challenge that some of us have sometimes with some of the regulatory postures is sometimes it's comes across as if there is kind of conflict, right, between what the government is trying to achieve and then the actual regulation that is being put in place. I give you an example, right? The government, through the central bank, has been driving financial inclusion.
True.
Right, over the years.
For more than 10 years.
Over the years, right? Yeah. And different targets have been set and missed and renewed and extended and all of that. And we're still on that journey, right? But on the other hand, in that same period of time, some of the regulations that the same government, right, through the regulator has also, pushed out, seem to have also discouraged, that's, the drive to achieve, actualize these targets, right? You talk about the okay, let me not even go too far. Like the recent one around the cybersecurity levy.
Yes, the cybersecurity levy. But I understand the House. The House has actually taken a position.
That's okay.
Against
but I mean,
that.
you look at a typical customer, financial services customer in Nigeria, right? The number of charges that hits your
accounts across board. Well,
for every digital transaction that you make.
I'm telling you, yes.
Right?
So,
and you then begin to wonder, how is this all going to increase or encourage?
Yeah, because I mean, you look at the quest of the government is to ensure that a lot of people who are unbanked or outside of the formal banking system should be able to, come into that formal banking system, because that itself will help in terms of data as we're looking at. It's going to help in terms of statistics. It's going to help in terms of managing our population output and, of course, also making decisions. So if some of these policies just rise up, or some of these, recommendations come up, obviously a lot of people will make the position that, why do I need to put my money in the bank? Because if I put my money in the bank, I'm going to be poorer than I should be.
And that's the point I'm making.
I should be richer. So what exactly is going on? Are we still driving the financial inclusion agenda of the central bank to ensure that at least the bottom of the pyramid, which we earlier mentioned, the numbers there will actually reduce, or we are, so sometimes I'm not a regulator, so I imagine, like you rightly said, that if it's from a risk management perspective and compliance, that is a wow. But how else do we ensure that the consumers are taken into all of this circle, and to make sure that the initial policy position is actually actualized? I think these are some of the questions that needs to be answered.
Very true. The entire framework also has to be looked at, holistically, because in the value chain, the central bank regulates the financial institutions, the mobile money operators. The agents are
they're more like subsets
of the financial institutions,
yes.
really.
Yeah, true.
Right? So
true.
they provide services to the financial institutions.
Yes, true.
Right? And perhaps that framework needs to be looked at, because part of the issue is that they are not properly incentivized, right, such that they are able to provide these services in a way that the financial institution would all benefit, right? And for them, who are these agents? They are mainly small businesses.
True.
That's what they are.
True.
Corner shops,
True.
right, in the remote areas.
True.
That's what they are.
True.
So how are they also being incentivized to be able to help the CBN achieve its own objective?
Yeah,
for the
because
financial services sector?
pardon me, because I have a question here that has to do with bridging the data trust and credit gaps, especially for micro and small enterprises. Because there is that aspect that has to do, which is what you are actually mentioning in terms of that regard. Because their contribution to the economy, to the GDP, cannot be taken for granted. So the necessary incentives that has to be put in place to even engender them and promote their businesses is beneficial for all parties involved. When we imagine that.
You're right, and the same thing presents itself. The SMEs, they are core to development. They are, in fact, a strong force, right? And these organizations, or these small organizations, need the support.
True.
The support of the government in such a way as to achieve their objective. But I want to say that when you talk about the data trust, you need data, and you need to mine the data to make some sense out of that data.
When we talk data, are we talking just information? All of those information we put into, okay, this is a form, you put that in, or does it also deal with consumer behavior or the buyers, dispositions and all of that?
Data is holistic.
Okay.
Right? Data is the entire aggregation of the information that a consumer has provided. So for instance, just like what you see when you go online to search for an information, for instance, Google already knows that, oh, this guy has an interest in this kind of information. Subsequently, you will notice that the kind of posts that will be coming your way will be in line with those
That's like magic.
Yes. So that is real what it is when you talk about data. So it's not about having data in silos, but it's about personalizing the data and using it for even future projections.
Projections,
Yes.
that's the word.
That's what it is.
Projections, that's the word.
So it's not just about...
So it's obviously strategic. It's a strategic asset of any organization.
Obviously.
At any given point in time.
That goes without saying.
Now, but you look at Nigeria's situation. What do we say in terms of our identity? Digital identity itself is one of the major aspects when it has to do with data. And we just seem to be scattered here and there, because one moment you have the national populations coming up, you have the national identification. As a matter of fact, your name is coming up with that. We have the BVN and all of that. Why is it so difficult for us to be able to have one unified digital identity that can, it encapsulates all of this data for ease of citizenry and engagement? I don't understand that personally.
It's a difficult question, to be honest with you. But one thing is for sure. If you look 20 years ago, 10 years ago, you could say that there's a bit of some baby steps that have been taken, right? Today, you have data seated somewhere, right? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that may not be I wasn't sure that was the case, right? So it means that we've made some progress. Now, having the data seated somewhere also is not enough, right? So integrating all of this data in such a way that you could then begin to make some real forecasts, real decision making with the pool of data that you have all over the place. So, and I think that's where the challenge is. And I think in the near future, we are going to get to that point.
All right. Like I said to you, I mean, television time is never a friend. This has been a very interesting conversation, and we hope we're going to have you again. I'm very sure my producer will want to consider that. But before we go, for 30 seconds, I want you to talk to the president and give him one or two advice that has to do with regulatory technology, especially in the 21st century.
I mean, my advice would be regulatory technology is an emerging area and it's become critical. It's become such a powerful tool for transformation of lives. The government should focus significantly in research and development and even investing resources to ensure that regulatory technology is used, becomes a core part of government function. It will help the government to block leakages. It will help the government to have direct access to citizens. It also helps the government to be more effective in terms of its functions. Thank you.
All right, I want to say a big thank you one more time, Mr. CYRIL Okoroigwe. He is the CEO from Reg Tech Africa, an impact organization, and they're in the forefront of promoting some of these issues that has to do with regulatory technology. And we're glad because, like you rightly said, the government needs to be able to take all of those advantages and then transform all of that to impact for the citizenry. I think for us, it's going to be beneficial for all parties involved. And that way to make a whole lot of things far, far much better than it is. All right, viewers, that's so much we can take on the interview segment. Business Matters continues after this short break.
Business matter. Let's talk business. Business matter.
Regulatory technology is here to stay. It will help us leapfrog, especially with the fact that we as Nigerians are supposed to be leaders in so many phases here in Africa. How we're able to adopt some of these ideas and insights, especially in our business operations, can definitely distinguish us as a brand that we should basically do business with. There's so much we can bring to you on this week's edition of the program Business Matters. My name remains Stephen Ipalbo Lawson. Until I come your way again, bye-bye for now.